and welcome to Inside Gaming, where today we are reviewing Until Dawn 2, which is not actually what it's called. It's Man of Medan?
Yeah, the Dark Pictures Poland.
Correct.
Man of Medan.
Medan.
I finished it and they never said the word out loud.
Medan? We're gonna go with Medan,
Yeah.
and this is the first of, in theory, a bunch of shorter story/film games that are going to come out like this.
I hope so.
Lawrence finished the first one.
Yes, here we are. So, yeah, it's the same people that brought you Until Dawn. And if you played Until Dawn, I don't want to tell you to not watch the rest of this video, but you basically know everything you need to. If you liked Until Dawn, buy this game, you're done. If you didn't like it, it depends why. There's some things about this that might sweeten it for you if you didn't enjoy Until Dawn. Some other things that might not. But I think how you received Until Dawn is basically going to be your barometer for how you like this game.
Very similar games in every way.
Yep, so yeah, it is a short horror story, because they're very directly trying to set this up to be a series of shorts, so that's what this is. Fittingly, it opens with like some World War II soldiers on a boat, which is how you start a very pulpy horror story of some like World War II, you know, jarheads finding some old mysterious thing
Spooky
that then
bullshit.
And then it clicks forward into modern day. That's just how it goes. But in terms of gameplay, if you played Until Dawn, you know what you're doing here. There are sequences where you sort of walk around an open environment, investigating things, picking things up, talking to characters, making decisions. And then there are some high intensity sort of linear scare sequences where you're running down hallways and pressing buttons to not trip on things and making quick decisions about what path to go on.
And if you make mistakes, you will die. That's basically the point.
Yeah, the kind of like Until Dawn, you set up with 5 main characters, which is actually kind of a smaller cast than Until Dawn had.
Yeah.
I kind of like it. It makes it a little more
8.
digestible. Had a lot.
Yeah.
This is a little more bite-sized, which I appreciate. But yeah, they will start to fall like dominoes depending on the decisions you make or your skill at navigating QTEs. One thing that is nice, though, is they do have accessibility options to either make like tapping things just hold a button or to remove the QTs entirely, which I thought was pretty cool.
I can't tap. It hurts my thumbs. So I changed that immediately, and it was very handy.
I changed it because I found a bug where the tapping wasn't registering.
Not great.
I was playing too hard gamer and just tapping too fast. I like Bruce Lee punching in between frames. That's how I tend to think about it. Another interesting thing with Man of Medan is there's a huge new feature, like actual full-on real-time multiplayer co-op. We'll talk about in a second. But in terms of like the structure of it, they now provide you something called bearings, which is, it kind of tracks all the very important decisions that you've made. So then you know, okay, these are the things that if I go back and change, it will probably have a ripple effect. It's not quite as explicit as something like Detroit. Like Detroit showed you a literal flow chart of all the decisions you made and how all those resulted in like a finite number of endings. Man of Medan, not quite that literal. I don't think you can look at the bearings and see like, okay, this is how this person died and I'll avoid that in the future, but that's there. So at least you have something to do next time if you want to play it again, which is kind of the whole point. You play through it multiple times and see what happens.
Can I ask how long was one playthrough?
It's about 5 to 6 hours.
Okay.
Which,
pretty digestible.
exactly. As far as I consider this, that's the sweet spot of like one solid good evening with a lot of friends.
Yeah.
You just start it, you play through the whole thing, and then you finish up like 11 o'clock midnight, and everyone's kind of tired, and we've just seen a bunch of people die. So it's a fun experience. And there are even some modes that they've added that really play into the idea of playing it in a room full of people.
Absolutely.
Which I really, really appreciate. So yeah, to me, this game is like, they clearly really like this sort of thing, short horror stories.
Yeah, it's like a horror slash a teenage drama type thing, and that's what they're going for, just with a different setting this time.
Yes.
It's not a spooky cabin in the snow, it's some boats and pirates and
Exactly, yeah. So the kind of lending into the anthology aspect of it too, you again have a host or a narrator like Peter Stormare in like Rush of Blood or whatever. It's like that Crypt Keeper character. This time it's a genteel old British man.
I like him.
Yeah, he's charming and mysterious. You know exactly what you'd want from that kind of character.
You will make some careful decisions throughout the game. It's basically how he talks.
He'll eventually show, like between every act, of which I'm pretty sure there are about 3, he'll show up and give you some very ominous messages about the status of what you're doing and whether or not your choices will have unintended consequences, give you some cryptic hints about the structure of the story, which we won't talk about too much. Don't want to spoil it, because that's kind of the whole point. But in terms of the actual story and the writing, it's very pulpy, it's very dumb and schlocky. That's what it's meant to be, though, so I don't consider that necessarily a failure. If it were a movie, it would be a mess, if I'm not lying. Like, a lot of the narrative threads that start with these characters at the beginning just wash away completely by the end. The pacing is a little weird.
You can't really have anything that would be a through line when anyone could die at any given point, so I understand why that mess exists.
Yes, yeah, and it's fine, but the virtue of it being interactive, I think, more than compensates for maybe the narrative not being so locked together.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a lot of good horror will, kind of like Twilight Zone or Outer Limits or Black Mirror, will have like a narrative and then the horror that is related to the narrative, or somebody learns about their narrative through the horror experience and then they come out on the end a different person, they go through an arc or whatever. 80s slasher films, not so much. It's usually like pure girl learns how to defend herself and uses a bat or something to kill a killer. But yeah, it doesn't really have that. There's not a lot of philosophical punch to it aside from scary thing is picking off these dumb teens one at a time, which sometimes that's all you need. And I appreciate it.
I think the story is like, I love Until Dawn and I like what I played in Medan, and I did play it with 5 people. I think the story is in part what you do and you figuring out your actions and the consequences of them rather than what's scripted. That's why I feel like I'm okay with it being kind of dumb and not having much to think about.
I agree. I think the story is your experience in talking about it with people, so it doesn't really matter that much. I will say that the writing does create some interesting circumstances that are kind of neat and I haven't really experienced in an interactive narrative. So again, I don't want to spoil too much, but there is a situation where somebody has to like make a phone call while they're being held captive, and then you make that decision, like, do I try to tell them that I'm being held hostage? Do I try to play it cool? You know, there's some stressful moments that good writing creates those circumstances that kind of put you in and force you to make decisions. So that's a testament to the writing, I think.
Yeah.
More in creating those moments versus creating a really tight narrative that hangs together super well. So yeah, but there are some inconsistencies and some continuity errors, I guess, where characters will do one thing in one scene, and then in the next scene they'll say something that completely sort of emotionally contradicts what they've just done.
But it's something that you chose, right?
Theoretically, yeah. Sorta. Specifically, there was like a character that revealed something very obviously, and then the next thing was like, oh, we can't reveal this thing. We have to do that. And I'm like, well, you just showed it. So I think there are some like scenes that maybe play out of order. Sometimes your spider sense goes off when you're watching a movie, and you're like, that was weird. It's usually because they did an edit that didn't make sense, so probably I saw scenes out of order or something. I don't know. So yeah, but kind of rolling it all back, the whole point is you make decisions, those decisions have consequences. Kind of back to the bearings thing, it's not super obvious what causes what, but that's kind of the point. If you know exactly what decision led to a fail state, you would just robotically go back through and try other stuff. So
sometimes going on the fast path will mean it's more risky and you could hurt yourself in a QTE, but the character won't die. But then going on the slow path means another character will die because you were too slow. You ultimately have no way of knowing.
Yeah, you just have to play through it multiple times and see how variant it can get, which I've seen, I want to say the first half of the game 3 times. And I played it all the way through once. Mm-hmm. And that first half can get pretty different. Not in ways that I would consider ultimately meaningful to the plot, but character interactions vary quite a bit. And you actually learn a lot about the characters based on those mundane interactions they have. So that's neat.
Yeah, I feel like that's the whole point. And like with Until Dawn, the ending was definitely, it ultimately led to who is alive at the end of this game and who is not, and not any other plot resolution. Would you say Medan is the same?
There are a few. There's one big subplot that just does evaporate completely at a certain point, which could have a cool resolution depending on what ending you get, maybe. There are a couple of smaller ones that might get picked up, but seem like they were just there for that one conversation. So yeah, mostly there is a point in, going back to the pacing bit a little bit, it's basically like first act is all character establishment, second act is like kind of rising tension, and third act is just balls to the wall crazy until it ends. Which, Until Dawn had more of an up and down, more I think.
Yeah.
So it is just sort of a long ramp to the end, and it just nuts out crazy for the last hour and a half. So
cool.
That is very cool, but it also means there's not a lot of character development or conversation happening at the end, which is where all these things would supposedly resolve, and they just kind of don't. But in terms of like, it is a package, I am also impressed with how Supermassive really put a lot of features in this game, some experimental stuff. So there's 2 other modes aside from just playing it through yourself. One that you kind of referenced, the couch co-op.
Yeah, I've tried both of the multiplayer modes, which are really good. So one is couch co-op where you can play with 2 to 5 players, and you basically have those players assigned to a character, and it will tell you whose turn it is. So say if I'm playing with Lawrence, it'll be like, Lawrence's turn, hand the controller to Lawrence. So you're each in charge of a different character, and I really liked that because you don't necessarily have to agree with anyone else's motives. You could play with 5 people and you could be against each other or disagreeing with whatever the other person has done, and you can keep doing that and they get to watch you do it, but you're the one with the controller. So I found that really, really fun, and the conflict that can come out of that is really fun. And then the co-op mode, I didn't play a ton of, I only played about 45 minutes of that. But that is, you're playing through the same thing at the same time, but seeing completely different things. Kind of like, I think Dead Space 3 had a co-op mode like that.
Yeah, Kane and Lynch had some modes like that. Yeah, it's been tried. And so yeah, the couch co-op thing I think is awesome because it creates discussion, and that's the meta story I think of the game. And as much as you want to yell at a movie and tell somebody to not go that way, You can literally do that now, which is awesome, and have them respond to you. So I really like that with the couch co-op mode, and that's actually how I played until dawn. It was me and Stephanie like trading the controller.
Yeah,
back
I did
and
with my
forth.
mom.
Yeah, so I think they knew that a lot of people were experiencing that this way, and so they made it sort of explicit. The good news is, like you're saying, it creates this whole fun party environment, and they even have like little medals that pop up for characters at the end of every chapter, which means like if somebody killed a character, just puts a Grim Reaper on them, and then everybody can yell and throw popcorn.
Yeah.
But one of the weird things was if you're playing with less than 5 people, you divvy up the characters without knowing what order you're going to play them in, and it can kind of come into a situation where one person's playing for like an hour straight, they trade it off for 20 minutes, and then it comes back to them because you don't really know who you're going to take control of next. That's just how it goes. So yeah, I really appreciated that. But however, the co-op, like the true real co-op, which is 2 players playing at the same time from 2 different perspectives, having different conversations and making different choices, to me that is, I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure that's the first time something like that's ever happened in an interactive movie game like this.
I think so, yeah.
And I think that's worth like really acknowledging, because to me that's sort of a fundamental cool thing that hasn't really happened before, and I think this game deserves a lot of credit for that, because it works, it really works. And it works to the extent that like you wouldn't think, and it's hard to spoil it, but this game is sort of dependent on perspective. And when you can see the same thing from 2 different perspectives, it actually really changes your experience with the game. Trying to be vague here.
You can't always though, so in my experience I was playing with someone online, so I didn't see what they were seeing. So we were talking to each other over the internet, and we're like,
that's
well,
cool.
I have no idea, like I'll be like, what just happened to you? But then I'm having dialogue, so I'm having to be like, wait, shut up, I need to listen to the game. So it's like very odd co-op experience. Not in the way that I didn't like it was just very different to anything that I played, because we were sort of playing a different game that just existed on the same timeline.
You should. So I've wondered about that, because I got to see it like 2 TVs side by side.
Yeah.
Which sometimes the 2 characters are in the same spot and seeing something, but like what's shown is different depending on the character and some other things that I won't talk about because I don't want to spoil too much.
I think that's probably a very uncommon way to play it.
I think it is. Which I think also sets up another cool narrative where you're talking about a particular sequence and you're like, oh, can you believe this thing? And the other person's like, that wasn't there. And then you like compare notes and there's that weird middle layer of...
Again, Dead Space 3.
Yes, very Dead Space 3, of showing certain things to one character but not making it explicit to the other character that they're seeing those things. Another thing about the co-op is like you get to make conversation and decisions that are just not there when you're playing by yourself. So in single player or in couch co-op, you come up as, what's his name? Brad. The younger brother, the nerdy guy.
Yep, big fan.
You play as him for the chapter. But if you're playing co-op, then somebody else plays Alex, I think.
Alex sounds right.
Yeah. And then you make decisions as Alex. So you actually control the conversation from 2 points instead of 1, which is awesome. To me, that's fundamentally more interactive, which is what I would hope the point of this being a video game is.
Yeah.
So I consider that like a real fundamental step, I don't know necessarily forward, but it's a genuine improvement on the format. And it can get a little chunky. I do appreciate that they did some audio work, so it's like if you're wandering around an area and somebody else is in a conversation, you can hear that conversation yourself. And then if you start one, then yours overpowers theirs. So they did a little acknowledging of like, this can be a little rickety when 2 characters are doing stuff at the same time.
Yeah, there are some periods where you have to wait for the other character to make a decision, so you're just looking at a screen that's like, Alex is choosing to do something.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So there are pauses, and it does make the pacing a little bit strange, but it's a very unique experience, and I think just makes the whole game even more replayable than it already was.
100%. It's wild too, because if you play it by yourself, or if you play it even couch co-op, there's a certain perceptual gimmick to the game that becomes a little more obvious by the end of it. But if you play co-op and you can see both perspectives at the same time of like the 2 soldiers on the boat way at the beginning, you kind of know even from the beginning what the thing is, which I thought was super cool. So it is a fundamentally different experience of like, one is, what's the horror, like there's always that mystery of what the conceit of the horror is, because it was just a man with like a gun, then that's not exciting. It's either like a supernatural threat or something like that. So when you know what it is from the outset, but it doesn't ruin the experience, but it does give it a new perspective, which I thought was super cool.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on a bit to, I guess, the quality of the experience. We talked a ton about like the structure of it, which is kind of the whole point, but I thought the game looked really, really good.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I'm playing it on PC, so it's gonna be like a punch above, I think, but it's Unreal Engine 4, and man, does it look great. Holy crap.
Faces look great. I feel like the amount of expression that they get off of everyone is really solid. It's very pretty.
Yeah, and there's a lot of underwater stuff, and the lighting is super good. Just a very pretty game in general. The acting, is good enough. I consider it sort of gated by the writing. You know, these are pretty, I wouldn't say one-dimensional because they do have character traits, but there is the nerd, the girl.
The rich guy.
Yeah, the douche. They're all there. There are some characters that stand out more than others just because I like their personalities more. I thought they were all really well acted to the degree that the writing gives them the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
In terms of assets, though, I found the voices a little like muffled and washed out.
Yeah, I felt like the audio mixing is a bit off. Like sometimes you can hear them and sometimes you can't, and it's strange.
Yeah. Even apart from like volume and mixing, just the quality of the voice acting seemed a little low. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just my ears being weird, but it did kind of feel a little more canned and muffled than I would have expected, which is weird because the visuals are so high quality.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't notice that, but maybe I wasn't paying attention.
I mean, yeah, it could also do with headphones or headsets or
Yeah,
whatever.
environments we're playing in.
The music, I could take or leave. There were a couple of weird times where the music seemed to be looping incorrectly. Like it would just cut off and then start the same track again, which was a little distracting. There's a really long, well, I say really long because I watched it 3 times. There's a long, like kind of grunge rock sequence at the beginning, a title sequence of the curator like walking
Very
through.
funny.
It's intense and very self-serious, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I have heard that song a lot now because I started the game over so many times.
Yeah.
So it's stuck in my head, but I like it.
It's unskippable.
Yeah. I just haven't heard music like that since like, I don't know, 1998.
Yeah.
Of a dude with a goatee just...
Yeah, it's basically
very much that.
Metallica.
Yeah.
I feel like there are also a lot of points of this game where, like, if you watch the Funhouse gameplay, where we make fun of the game because there are so many points where you like pick up an object and then you just sort of, and you imagine what that would be like in real life if someone's just standing at something for 5 seconds, spinning it and putting it back down. And I think that's very easy to make fun of, but I don't feel like that ever takes me out of the game. I just find it entertaining, as strange as it is.
Oh, sure. I think horror movies exist in their own reality. And whenever you watch a horror film or play a horror game, you have to be a little accepting of certain things not making sense.
Yeah.
And one of those is that. I think
So you walk into like someone will walk into
Yeah.
a wall and just like there's a lot of like janky stuff, but yeah, I'm forgiving of a lot of this because it doesn't hurt my enjoyment, doesn't hurt the enjoyment of the people I'm with. If anything, it makes it funnier. It doesn't make the game worthless is kind of how I feel about it. It doesn't decrease
Yeah.
value is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think, yeah, when some character is standing there staring at a coin with all the intention or all the intensity in the world, or if you're playing co-op and 2 characters are having a conversation like below deck on a boat, and you can hear it outside because apparently they're just screaming it and they're talking about how much of a bitch the captain is and she's right there, just like trying to pilot the ship. There's some innate comedy in the fact that it is a video game and sometimes it doesn't match up with
They
real
do
life.
what they can.
Yeah, they do what they can, which, you know, it, like you said, doesn't get in the way of anything. If anything, it makes those moments funnier and then they come and go.
Yeah, I guess the point is just we can't tell you that the game is perfect, but I do really like it. I've had a lot of fun with it. I haven't finished it, but I loved Until Dawn as well for the same reason, where it's you have to kind of not take it seriously, but it's not trying to tell you to. So that's why it's not like I would be like 5 out of 10 because this part was strange, because I feel like it's still very fun.
Yeah, it's not the kind of game where you can just tick down a list of bullet points and deduct a 0.5 for everything that's off, because that's not really what it's for. And what it's for, it does exceedingly well. You just have to decide if that's something you want or not.
Yeah.
At $30, I think if you invite all your friends over and everybody Venmos you $5 for like pizza and beer, you're gonna have a great evening, and it's probably gonna be cheaper than going out to see a movie. So, you know, consider that. Yeah, and you could play it through multiple times. You could have a couple weekends just digging through the various paths through the game.
Yeah.
I think it's a good spot, and I do hope they make more. So I'm not going to be shy about recommending it, especially if you're a fan of horror or just interactive movie games.
Yeah.
It's fun to see them try new stuff. And I really do feel like they tried their best to cram a lot of content in the game. Not only are there like 3 basic modes to play the game, but there's like a secondary sort of director's alternate path mode, which I haven't played. I don't know how different it is yet because I've been playing the single player so much, or the main campaign, I guess. There's plenty of unlockables. They even have a special features section that has like a lot of good stuff in there. There's like a featurette about anthology horror, going back to like early radio plays and TV series and things like that. So they really tried their best, and I can appreciate that. And the price is so, I would consider very generous for something like this. So
In conclusion, it's not perfect, but it's very good at what it tries to do.
yeah, and if you like what it tries to do, just get it.
You'll love it.
There's really no question. So yeah, thank you, Supermassive. Great work. I'm glad you're out there pushing the boundaries a little bit. That co-op mode really did blow my mind, and that's really, really cool. So yeah, thank you. I hope you guys enjoy the game. Thank you, by the way, for providing review access. We got to disclose that, ethics and all that. Thank you for watching this review. We'll catch you next time on Inside Gaming.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Video games provide us with a more interactive experience when it comes to apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic worlds. Via controllers and keyboards, we explore wastelands, fight mutants, fend off hordes of the undead, starve and perish again and again in hundreds of different settings, all from the comfort of our couches and overly expensive computer chairs. But why? Why?